Hello, my friends. Hello, welcome back. We got another Guardians Daily for you. Thank you for tuning in. As always, we are presented by FanArch. I'm your host, Luke Gable. We're going to hop right into it. We got a little sweep for your Cleveland Guardians. The Brooms were out yesterday in Detroit. Afternoon game, not a problem for the Cleveland Guardians. They woke up in time and took the care of business against the Tigers. Things are falling apart in Detroit. I'm going to be honest, they've lost 15 of their last 17 games. Hard to believe that there was a lot of expectations coming into this season for the Tigers. Obviously, they had a pretty successful season last year. Were winning the division the entire season. Obviously, ended up blowing it right at the end to the Guardians. But then they did, to give them credit, they beat the Guardians in the postseason last year. Ended up putting up a really good fight against Seattle. Went out and spent a ton of money this off season. They're not that good. It's been a disappointment across the board for the Tigers this year. I want to start with this just because we're going to be moving off the Tiger talk soon. Going to be going head to Philadelphia this weekend to take on the Phillies. But I do want to touch on what's going on in Detroit right now because it's an interesting state of affairs. They went out, they spent all that money, they got Flaherty back, they paid Framber Valdez a big contract, which already kind of raised some red flags because he sat on the market a little longer than you expected. He's a guy, there's been questions about his character, kind of doesn't seem like the best clubhouse guy. Obviously, there was problems with the catcher last year in Houston, was not the best look, but he has been one of the best pitchers in baseball. Like with Valdez has been very good, but not the case this year. Flaherty's been below average as well. None of the guys they really invested in have played well. Obviously, the offense has been terrible over this last month for them, and it just kind of all came to a head this week at the ballpark. And yesterday was a nice finishing touch for your Guardians, completing the sweep. Joey Cantillo getting the win. Patrick Bailey hit a home run. That's fun. Nice to see that there's anything in that bat. Also, his first hit as a Guardian, but good to see from Bailey. At least just if he can just give you a little bit of a power threat, you know what he's doing behind the plate. He's been awesome back there so far. Obviously, they gave up a lot to get him for the Guardians, so want to see that investment continue to play off. And then obviously Hedges is still going to get his reps as well. So I've liked what I've seen so far from that move. I think it's helped this lineup. It's kind of helped this pitching staff as well. Yeah, a lot of nice things yesterday. Obviously, the bullpen was really good once Cantillo came out. We're going to talk bullpen in a little bit. I think they deserve some credit. Yeah, clean baseball game yesterday for the Guardians, and that's just kind of the way they've been playing for a couple weeks now. I've been on a really good run, first place in the division, kind of growing that lead. Obviously, they've really distanced themselves from Detroit, obviously, and Kansas City as well. And then the Twins are still in the picture, and the White Sox are playing some really good baseball. We won't see them for a couple weeks, but I'm looking forward to that first White Sox matchup of the season. But yeah, big win yesterday for your Cleveland Guardians. And yeah, a nice save. Hunter Gaddis actually got the save. And I want to talk a little bit about this bullpen. Starting to round into form a little bit, starting to get a comfort in the sense of who's going to pitch where, finding those roles, getting established. Obviously, some new guys coming up with Holderman, who's been pretty nice lately. Seeing his stuff. He's got that nice sinker, which I really like. He had a good outing in the third game of the series against the Tigers. Ailman came up. Obviously, he got sent back down, but they liked what they saw from him while he was up. We've seen a little less Festa lately, leaning heavily into that Sabrowski as your real setup guy. And then, honestly, I think it's really an interesting between the seventh and eighth inning who goes first between Gaddis and Sabrowski. Excuse me. I think there's a lot of trust in both those guys, and obviously, it all starts and ends in that bullpen with Cade Smith. He's been on an absolute tear lately. Was a little bit of a shaky start this season. I think it's still just an adjustment period for him because he was that early innings guy for so long with Clase being the closer. And it was just whenever there's a big spot, we put Cade in, unless it's a save. Obviously, at that time, it would be Clase. But now, as you moved in, you're just going to be our closer. We're not going to be seeing you much unless if it's a save situation. Could be an adjustment for a young guy like Cade. He's really settled in. He's been awesome his last 15 appearances or whatever it is. He's been lights out. And even when he was quote unquote struggling, it was more just getting some traffic, kind of some longer saves than actually blowing saves or missing opportunities. just more seemed like more of a struggle for him and things like that nature for him earlier in the season. But he's really found his role, settled in as the closer for this team. So I think that's been a nice boost for the rest of this bullpen. And there's a lot to like in this pen. Obviously, Tim Herron still around. Armstrong's back from the IL. I think Armstrong they like. I think he's a guy they trust in certain situations. Obviously, he's a pro. He's a veteran. Why they brought him in here. So you've started to see things, and the bullpen guys are never going to get the credit they deserve. But for the last 10, I mean, it feels like you could say this about our starting pitching as well, but like it feels like the last decade, it's just been a pitching factory. And you start developing these guys in the pen, and they turn into at least giving you multiple seasons of consistent play. Whether that how long that lasts, how long they stick with the team, like that can vary got from guy to guy. But there has been a lot to like in the pen for the Guardians this year. And I think we're really starting to see those roles established. Hunter Gaddis getting back and getting healthy. He looked really good in that. He got the save yesterday. Obviously, Kate had gotten a lot of work already this week. So I'd like to see that from Gaddis. Like Hunter Gaddis was one of the best pitchers in this pen, especially a couple years ago. Got a little beat up last year, still, and then this year, obviously starting the season late on IL. We're worried a little bit when he came back. The velocity didn't look the same. His velocity is still not back to exactly where it used to be in that upper 90s, but he's settling in. You got to remember Hunter Gaddis came up as a starter. Like he got some starts for this Guardians teams in the early 2020s. Went found himself, created a role for himself in the bullpen, and has really flourished in that role. So I'm a Hunter Gaddis supporter. Mark me down. If there's anyone else out there, we're all in the Hunter Gaddis club. Happy to join. But yeah, like what I've seen from Gaddis so far. Seen him kind of turn back into that pitcher he was for this team. And I think there's a role for him in that seventh, eighth inning as a setup guy, along with Sobrowski, who's been a dog all season. So like where we're at with this Guardians bullpen, and pretty much like where we're at with this team. And as we look into the American League right now, right at the top, technically we'd be second in the American League in terms of playoff seeding, since the Rays and Yankees are both AL East teams. Obviously, Tampa Bay has been awesome this year. They're in first place in the East. Yankees 2.5 back of them. So they're kind of fighting things out there. And then the Athletics and White Sox are both right on the Guardians' heels. Athletics, obviously, that would just be for the league and wild card standards like that. And then the White Sox in our division, I think that's going to be the team of the summer that we're kind of competing against. It's been a while. It's been a while since the Chicago White Sox have had this much excitement and talent on a team. It's been probably since those Tim Anderson, Juan Moncada years where they were really getting that excitement, that juice going. We always think back to that Field of Dreams game, with Tim Anderson hitting that walk-off. A lot of other Cleveland fans think of the Jose knockout when they think Tim Anderson as well. So there's a lot of memories there. He's almost out of baseball. Kind of a bummer story there. We're not going to talk too much more Tim Anderson. That shout out to him. Who thought he'd get a cameo today? But this White Sox team, I've just been looking across. Obviously, we haven't matched up yet this season for the Guards, but it's obviously been a team we've beat up on for the last 4 years or whatever, 10 years if you want to go back further and further. Just been a team we've beaten and beaten handily. Now, I think that's a thing we got to keep in mind. Obviously, you can start to think, oh, well, we just continue to do that. Got to be aware that team's going to be hungry. They're going to be the Guardians are the team they're coming after, whether that be in the division and also just the fact, especially some of those guys who've been there. Hey, screw these guys. I'm sick and tired of losing to the Cleveland Guardians. You would have thought that would happen in Detroit. Hasn't yet, at least not for their players. But that's a thing to keep an eye on with the White Sox on our tail in the AL Central. That White Sox team has some players. Obviously, Murakami's been the big star, the story from overseas. Obviously, he's been hitting the cover off the ball. That pitching staff has been good as well. So there's a lot to like with the White Sox right now. Davis Martin's been very good. Obviously, we don't play them for at least another, I think it's 2 weeks. So we'll get back to that talking now. You just want to plant that seed in your head though. White Sox are gonna be that's gonna be the team this season and this summer was more what I was leaning towards. But I think that's gonna be a team to watch this summer for your Guardians. Twins as well, but I still just don't think there's enough depth in that lineup to really get me put that fear in me. But you never know. We've been wrong on the Twins before. Obviously, we thought we thought they weren't even going to be in the picture. The Royals and Tigers were definitely had higher expectations than the Twins and White Sox this year. and it's been the inverse. And obviously, like things tend to go, the AL Central, Cleveland Guardians still on top. So excitement there. And I want to look ahead to this weekend series. We go to Philadelphia. They made a big move, obviously fired Rob Thompson earlier this season, and they've kind of flipped a switch. Schwarber's been hitting Schwar bombs all summer. I guess it's still not even technically summer. Well, I guess when was it this weekend? We're getting there, but he's been awesome so far this year. Obviously, at the top of that lineup, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, the JT Realmuto, the big names in this lineup go on and on. So it's going to be a big weekend, a big test for this Cleveland Guardians. Obviously, Christopher Sanchez is their ace. We'll see him this weekend. We got Gavin Williams on the mound for Friday baseball. So going to be interesting to see how things go in Philly. Obviously, Guards have won 6 straight. This is a team coming in hot. So it's going to be 2 teams playing good baseball at the moment. Obviously, the Bank's always a tough place to play. So I am excited to see what we get from this Guardians pitching staff, especially because I think this Phillies lineup, especially right now when their guys are hitting, is one of the better ones in baseball, despite their early season struggles. So I think it's kind of exciting to see what can we do. How do we look against guys like Schwarber, like Bryce Harper, all the people we just named, because there are those kind of big name stars in that lineup, and we don't get to see as many of those playing in the American League Central. Feels like first off, let's call a spade a spade. The American League compared right now to the NL, there's just a big gap in teams in terms of talent and success. There's 5 teams in the NL East that are above 500, and there's 4 teams in the American League in total above 500. So it's just like there's a gap there right now, and it's still early in the season. We're not even to June baseball yet, but it's worth noting that there is such a gap between the 2 leagues. So we're going into the NL. Obviously, we're not none of the pitchers are going to have to hit. That rule's gone. So kind of, which I do miss, you know, always was fun. Like, hey, we're at an NL park, but really it was a rule that didn't make enough sense because the pitchers didn't take enough time and pride in the hitting. So obviously, international DH been that way for a while, but for those of us that remember, it'd be fun to see the Gavin try and go hit. He seems like an athlete. Kluber was awesome when he used to do it. So who knows? CC, he was great. Don't get that anymore when you go to the NL. It feels like any old ballpark. But who cares? We're going to Philly this weekend. Gavin on the mound Friday. And then interesting to see how the rotation falls after that. Then it will probably be Slade and Messick to close out the weekend. Gonna do a home run pick. We're gonna do a home run pick for your Cleveland Guardians. We've been good on these lately. Home run this weekend for the Cleveland Guardians. Rhys Hoskins in his return to Philadelphia as a member of the Guardians. I think he hits one out. He always hit one out. He was a good hitter for the Phillies for a long time. So hopefully that being back at Citizens Bank kind of brings back some old memories. Rhys Hoskins home run this weekend. And let's get 2 out of 3. Not greedy. Not greedy. Not even asking for a sweep. Just want 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. And then we come back on Monday and we'll talk all about what happened this weekend and get you set for another week of Guardians baseball. It's what we do here on Guardians Daily. So appreciate you coming with us. Appreciate you tuning in. If as always, be great if you liked it. Subscribe, do those kind of things. I think it helps. We'll see. Who knows? But we appreciate it. We appreciate your time. Hopefully you appreciate mine. We'll see you this weekend and hopefully get a nice win of a series for your Cleveland Guardians. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.